Selling a home is often treated like a financial transaction, but for most people, it's anything but that. A home isn't just walls and square footage, it's a container for memories, identity, and entire chapters of life. It's where holidays were celebrated, kids were raised, routines were built, and a sense of safety and belonging was formed. So when it's time to sell, what often comes up isn't excitement, it's grief. In this conversation, I sit down with my good friend, Johanna, a clinical psychologist who works closely with families navigating major life transitions. Together, we explore the emotional side of selling a home, especially for those empty nesters saying goodbye to a phase of parenthood, families selling because of divorce or loss, and anyone facing destabilizing experience of letting go of a place that once felt like home. We talk about why letting go can feel like losing a part of yourself, why pricing a home can become deeply personal, and why inspections and buyer critiques can feel less like feedback and more like attacks on identity and security. We also discuss practical ways to cope with this transition, including a powerful idea Johanna calls a goodbye ritual, a way to honor what a home represented while still being able to move forward. I'm Salazar, and if you're thinking about selling or helping someone who is, this conversation will give you a deeper understanding of what's really happening beneath the surface. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below, hit the subscribe button, and let's get to it. In our second episode with Dr. Johanna, we're talking about sellers. To me, Johanna, this is honestly is probably a little bit harder to deal with than working with buyers. So I'm super excited to have you on again for our second episode to go deeper on why sellers have such a difficult time saying goodbye to their house. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Excited to be back.
Yes. So let's get right into it. So let's start with our first topic. Why is the home such a huge attachment for single people, couples, and mainly families?
So you already noted to it that the process of selling your home is really different than buying one. It's a completely different emotional journey. And if we're going to talk about selling a home, we do need to have just a basic understanding of attachment and why it's so foundational to our behavior day to day. So for thousands of years, our survival has been dependent on being together in groups. We are fairly defenseless against animals that are much larger than us. We need a lot of help to raise offspring who need a lot of time to develop. And we really do well using our brains and working together. That has been like our magic or secret sauce. So our brain has made it so it is incredibly important to bond. It makes love something we all really enjoy, and if we don't have it, we really long for it. So our brain is wired around bonding, being social, attuning to each other's emotional needs. And when we don't have it, we ache for it. We don't like being alone. We don't like being alone. We're lonely. Loneliness hurts in the body. You know, we don't do well without support. We don't do well when we feel like we don't belong. So we try to stick together as much as we can. And for thousands of years, we've been hanging out in these tribes and taking care of each other. And we lived kind of a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle until about like 10, 15,000 years ago when some badass created farming and learned how to farm and to tend to crops. And now we have resources for our entire community. And once we learned how to farm, we really started to thrive. And we created a much more sedentary lifestyle, a foundation. We had homes that stayed put, we had neighbors, we had villages, we created culture, and we created the home. And our intrinsic, deep need to bond and to be incredibly loyal and to love hard extends beyond people. It's what's called a place attachment. When we now have an attachment that goes outside of ourselves and we attach to things and places. So we fall in love with our favorite city and it brings us nostalgia and a sense of belonging. We have a favorite park, or different locations to be, and we have our home. And our home provides a base camp to return to for relief. Having a strong sense of home has incredible psychological benefits. We feel at ease, we feel comfortable, we can rest so that we can recover and return to the environment that is ever changing and unstable. It's a recovery place, it's a place for respite. And we're lucky to have it. I mean, you can imagine for those that have home instability, it is a crisis. You can't feel comfortable and at peace without stable living. So those of us that are lucky to have it, we get attached to it. We become fond of it. It becomes, our place of enjoyment and peace. And so much so that even when you travel, like if you go to an entirely different country and you rent like an Airbnb for a few days, after a day or two, when you return to the Airbnb, you kind of sigh differently. Like, I'm home. We recreate it as often as we can. But to have a deep bond to our home is psychologically imperative for our sense of belonging and safety and community, that we don't take it lightly. We really get attached, and that's a good thing. That's a healthy thing.
Yeah. I really love how you just break this down from just going back, and just talking about how we live nomadic lives. And then when we started farming, then we started to have a home. And then like, that's when it all started, right? And you're right. I mean, I love going home, but I raised my hand earlier because I would like to have like a single family home with like a wife and kids, because I know that that's gonna, I'm happy where I'm at, right? But I know that's gonna be like the love that I'm yearning to have in the future. But I can also see how my clients have such a hard time letting go of this home, right? So it's to no surprise why I feel that for sellers, I believe it's a much harder transaction than it is for buyers. I know in our last episode, we talked about, how much it's hard for buyers to struggle into finding a home, the FOMO paralysis, finding the perfect home, having issues if they're buying a home with one of their partners and their identity is not being represented, right? But this is completely different, right? You spend on average of 8 years in a home, and in that home you have so many different memories, right? Most of these memories are couples that have kids, and so there's just so much attached to this house. So I can see why it would be difficult for sellers to, part ways, with the home.
The home is really a container for all of our memories over that time, and the celebrations and all the firsts and the traditions and the game nights. And so it's a very powerful structure, and it's a very powerful, we form emotional associations with things. Kind of like if you dug through your closet and you found a hoodie from college, you're kind of floated with an emotional response.
For sure.
That's the home. We see a hallway and we can picture our little one running up and down it, or we visit a grandparent's home that was sold 3 decades ago. We don't even have to go inside to feel just a wave of nostalgia. So it's almost like our home, like the walls are living. Like you're almost giving, like, it feels like a friend that has bared witness to our entire journey, if we're lucky to have that type of warm association with the home.
That's true.
It's a form
That's
of
true.
love.
Yeah, that's true. Because I'm sure there's other people that don't have that same feeling about a home. It could be traumatic. But I think for most people, and this is geared to most people that have homes, it's the safe haven. They have good memories in there. And even if they have bad memories, it's still a memory, right? And it's still hard to detach because a lot of people are addicted to the emotional trauma from the past.
Mm, mm. So it's visceral.
Yeah.
It's visceral. There's a smell to the home that is like infused with you in it. Like, you become one with the home. It's truly an extension of yourself.
Yeah. For sure. And I really, as you're talking about this and how you're describing the home, I can't really imagine any other thing, right? Obviously, we're attached to human
Mm,
beings, but there's no other like physical thing in the 3D world that we're so attached to as much as our home, right? I don't
mm.
think there's anything else. Like even cars, right? Cars come and go. Toys, boats. I don't know. I I think the home is really the hardest thing to let go of, and it's got the most weight and the most energetic charge to it
Mm.
emotionally.
And it's one of our largest investments. So we put a lot into it. We put a lot of money into our home for maintenance. We personalize it. We fill it with furniture. I mean, we work hard to maintain it and make it reflect us. But
Yeah,
as you're
we
saying, like, I
yeah
can't think of
we
anything else more emotional. I'm like, well, say that to my kids, like teddy bear. You try to pluck that away from him. That's on there, up there with the house. But I think you're right. Like, it is so foundational to our sense of belonging that we're not flippant about it. Or it'd be really interesting if someone was, they weren't that attached. But for most of us, the nostalgia of it for years of our life that we've invested in it, it's
yeah,
hard
for
to say
sure.
goodbye.
Yeah, for sure. And I like how you said, the identity part, right? How you buy the house, right? It's a big investment, so you're working years, sometimes a decade just to save up money to buy your first home, or
Mm,
you buy it with, with your partner. So there's a charge with two different people buying the house. And then when you buy the house, you gotta furnish it, right? Then you want to paint the rooms, you want to, add certain things, you want to make some changes, you want to add a pool, an outdoor kitchen, right? So you start to do all these things that that um, that make you who you are, right? You want that home to represent you, so that
mm,
when you
mhm.
come home, it feels like you. And I think that's important because when I come home, I just love coming home. I love coming to my
Mm.
place. It's always clean. Nobody's there to mess it up, except for my mom whenever she comes in. But she doesn't mess it up. She actually makes it even cleaner, which is nice. But like I spent years putting time and effort into getting custom furniture made, getting artwork, making sure it's clean, and I know that when I go there, I'm going to get the same feeling every single time. I'm going to
Mm,
feel, like you said, relaxed. I'm going to be just I'm going to feel warm, and
mm,
when you're out of town for, I was out of town, like I was telling you earlier, at Joe Dispenza for a 7-day retreat, and we were at a really nice hotel with great beds and great pillows and nice bathrooms, and it's nice. But you're living out of suitcase, right? And you don't have all your stuff. So I was excited to get back home and to just be in the energy of my space where I know where
mhm.
everything's at. I can make a meal. I can be a lot more relaxed than I would be if I was even at a nicer resort. Even if I was in like a Mexican villa, beautiful, it's still not
Well,
home, right?
I would take the villa, but I get what you're saying. The home
That's because you're
almost
in Chicago right now in the snow.
the home almost welcomes you. Welcome back, Paul. Like, it's just always there. It's dependable. And like you said, you personalized it. So what feels warm and cozy to you probably wouldn't to, 100 other people. And the artwork you maybe have gotten on your travels or your mom helped pick you out. So everything is nostalgic and has a purpose. It's designed to reflect you. Your eye is drawn to certain things. So it's made for you.
Yeah,
No
for
wonder
sure.
you feel so comfortable in there.
Yeah, and then you add kids to the mix, and then it's like an extra level of emotional attachment, right? So I think that's where it definitely compounds for those people that have been living in their house for more than 8 years. The average is 8 years, but there's a lot of people that will buy their house when they get married, and they sell it when they become empty nesters, and that's like usually 20 years, sometimes 30, 40 years. So it's a lifetime of memories in there. So I totally understand why it's such a hard process for them to let go of this asset. So now that we've gone deep on why the home is such a huge attachment for homeowners and for future sellers, let's talk about the actual breakup process, because that's the process that takes a long time. Sometimes it takes years for them to actually come to the understanding or the action of actually selling, because they're just sort of like, oh, I don't want to move, even if they're moving to some place better. So
Mm,
let's talk
mm.
about what that process looks like for sellers.
So the home breakup. even when we're like considering breaking up with a partner, it could take years, like we're unsure because it's painful. And even if you know it's the right thing to do, it hurts. When we think about breakups with loved ones, it's crushing. And you were describing how much you love coming home. I mean, that's a tough thing to say goodbye to. So, the selling process, when there is a deep emotional bond to the home, is a form of grieving. It's just feeling waves of sadness and waves probably of uncertainty. Is this the right thing? When do I know that it's time to move on? And you were saying before, like, you have all these things in the home that you're saying goodbye to. The art on the wall that fits perfectly in that wall. Your furniture that you got for that space. You customize things for that home.
Yeah.
That you're saying goodbye to the home, you're saying goodbye to your neighbors, and if you're moving towns, you're saying goodbye to your pharmacist and the checkout person at Walgreens and like this whole thing.
Yeah.
So you're really, saying goodbye to a whole lifestyle and a chapter in your life that served a great purpose. And part of that saying goodbye, I think about it takes a long time for folks to declutter and to downsize and to say goodbye to item after item. It's almost like a million little mini pricks of grief. Where it's hard to say goodbye to the kids' clothes or bring the posters down from the wall. A lot of times when parents are decluttering, they're trying to get rid of all the yearbooks and the prom dresses, and there's just decades of memories that they don't want to throw away. So it's a process of saying goodbye. And through that process, they're reliving all these moments in their life. I remember when I was the mother of a teenager and I was driving them to soccer practice. I remember when they were a baby and this was their, first set of pajamas. It's like it's flashing, before you all these chapters of your life that feel like you're saying goodbye to. That's overwhelming. That's why it's a process
Yeah.
that could take years.
Yeah, I think for me, I resonate with that so much, just because I've had to go through that, a few times. I haven't moved that much, luckily, but every single time I move, I've been at that place for more than, 5 or 6 years. And like you said, I'm always purging when I move because we are human and we like to collect things. And so that, the shirt you got at this, event, or, this candle you got, or, some cards, like I keep cards from people. So, a lot of things from, past relationships or photos, frames. And when I go into a new home, a new space, I like to kind of freshen it up. I don't want to bring the old home stuff back into, or from the old home into the new home. So for me, that process is super hard and it's super charged and it's super emotional. And I think, like most people, I tend to avoid it. So I like to do it to like last minute. And then when I do, it just like I don't feel good. It's just like it's so emotional. So, I mean, I would love to hear what you have to say about how we can go through that process a little bit easier because it's very, very difficult.
I would say to feel it.
Mm.
When we love something, we feel sadness saying goodbye. And I would feel the emotion that it brings up as just a cue. This is part of the process. And you already hinted at it. When you go to a new place, sometimes when you're in a fresh new place with fresh painted walls, you don't want to bring in this, the posters from college. So once you get to the next stage, you're probably going to feel a lot better having shed that old skin. So trusting that this is the process of grief, that you feel sad, you feel it in the moment, and then it rolls through your body, and the next breath is fresher air. So feel sad. Text a picture of it to your buddy. Remember this concert we went to? I still have the t-shirt. Like honor it in a way.
Mm.
Feel the emotion in a way. Sense their energy. And I think you can also say, like, these memories, live in me. They have a purpose that keeps on going. You know, these baby clothes, while I'm giving them away, kept my babies warm and soft and cozy, and that lives in them now. You know, even
Mm.
when they become adults, they're, you know, these clothes served a purpose. These memories serve a purpose. I had, you know, it's so much fun with certain things that I'm saying goodbye to. That still lives in me. That created my sense of self. So we can feel thankful for it. We can feel sad that we're saying goodbye, and then trust the process that the next breath will be fresher.
Mm.
We tend to feel better when we let go and shed some skin once in a while.
Yeah.
You know, like the whole like spring refresh, like that is hard. Like, do I really need this? And then it feels so good to look at like a fresh closet. So we're trusting the process. We know that decluttering and get rid of things is very emotional. There's one way to walk through it. And usually with the most awareness and attunement is the most meaningful.
Yeah. And also help. Like I actually have vendors here in LA that help with that process.
Mm.
Somebody who's not emotional,
Oh, that's
somebody
pretty neat.
who can be by your side while you're packing, or you know, when you're packing all your stuff, or you're trying to purge stuff, or you're getting ready for the move. And my clients really love it. They're like, wow, there's one lady, her name is Loetta, and she's like, yeah, you know, hey Paul, like if you have any clients looking for help with organizing or decluttering, or you know, getting ready to like move, I'm great at that. And she's also very empathetic, so she's not gonna be there and be like, oh come on, let's do it faster. She's understanding, right, of how that process is. And so I think having somebody by your side can be really helpful, because at least for me, Joanna, when I was decluttering, it took me a long time. Like you know, all right, 2 hours, I'm gonna go through this box, and no, it took me so much longer than 2 hours. I was sitting there looking at things, like you said, I was taking photos, I was sending it to friends, and so then a 2 hour project could be like a whole day, you know. So I think having somebody on your side could be a good way of helping you process these things a little bit faster. I mean, unless, like you said, it's good to feel them and process them, and instead of avoid them.
I love that tip. You know, get some support. There are people, like you said, you have certain vendors that probably know how good it feels to like get rid of things and have things fresh and tidy. And so they really believe in that process. So they can help you be really intentional about it. You could have a friend come who's awesome at organizing, or a family member come and you like share a little wine as you go from room to room. Like you can get support if you feel like it's going to be so overwhelming. I love that tip.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, look, here in LA, you can find somebody that can help you with anything. That's the thing.
Okay. All
I
right.
don't know. I don't know if that exists everywhere else. But look, even if you can't find a vendor that does that, find a loved one, you know, to
Exactly.
help you with that process, because you can make it fun as well. You know, if you're moving out of a home that you've been in for 20 years, and your kids moved out, invite your kids over. Hey, I'm gonna fly you in from college or whatever. We're gonna have like a like
Exactly.
a like a packing party, and it could be a fun process as well. It doesn't have to always be a dramatic and sad process. It can be a fun process as well.
You make a really good point that also the circumstance of why they're selling the home plays a big part on how much grief is there.
Mm.
If it's a let's cheers to an awesome new chapter, I got a promotion, we're moving to a city we've always wanted to live in, we can't wait to whatever, have a pool for the first time, and it's exciting, that's propelling it. That's a very different grieving process than when we're saying goodbye when we're not ready. Something happened that was out of our control. We're going through a divorce. Someone loses their spouse and they can no longer maintain the home. When it happens, when it's outside of our control, or you know, we're getting older and we're saying goodbye to really our, you know, for some people, not all, the best time of their life was
Mhm.
being a parent or having so much purpose that they feel like they're being pushed out in a way, even though there must be some reason they're selling. There must be some positive outcome that they're hoping to achieve. It just feels like they don't have choice. They're
Yeah,
being
that's a good
pressured to
point.
do it.
Yeah,
So
that's a
you're,
really good point.
and so in those examples, you're saying goodbye to all the wonderful things that happened in the home. but you're also saying goodbye to all the dreams that never came to fruition. I wanted another 10 years. I wanted an intact marriage. I wanted my partner to stay with me an extra 10 years or whatever. So there's some sadness that this isn't what I planned. This isn't what I'd hoped for. I wasn't ready for this next chapter. And the selling the home adds some finality to it. It adds finality to the divorce. It adds
Yeah.
finality to the empty nesting experience. Like now now we're shifting.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I can resonate with that, right? Like you said, there's, when it's not your choice, I think it's even harder because it's forced. So like you said, divorces, and when both parties are, obviously there could be divorces where things are much easier, but there's sometimes, somebody's really holding on to that relationship and the other one's already gone, right? So that's really hard. Or if you're getting older and you can't walk up and down the
Right.
stairs and you have to leave that house and you're like, I don't want to leave this house. I love this home. And so I get a lot of people that say, I'm going to die in this home. I'm not leaving,
Mm,
and I get it, that's their place. So I can see how that can be harder if it's not your choice, if you're not going to a new exciting new home or a new city, it's a much harder process.
So let's talk about then some things you can do to help this process feel more comforting and to gain more meaning from it. The first thing you can do, and you already noted to it, is a farewell ritual. How can we have some sense of warmth with this goodbye? And the farewell ritual, the one that I created, involves 3 steps: to honor, to keep, and to give. So to honor would be, you already gave some examples, having the kids fly home. Let's have one last weekend in the house. You all stay in your old rooms. We're going to have, a last family dinner. We're going to have a family, a movie night. Maybe we'll go room to room and we'll share memories that were held in each room. Let's bond together to honor the beauty of what this home gave us. So, whoever's selling can create their own way to honor the home and give respect to the home as a way of just showing their love and
I like that.
sharing it with other people. The next one is to keep. What do we get to keep our memories with us. We forget that, but we get to bring our memories with us. So what can represent that? What can we take from the home that we're going to keep? Whether it's like a bunch of pebbles from the backyard that we put in a vase and put like a floating candle on top, or can you find some old wallpaper that you had extra and you want to frame it and put it somewhere? Like, what do you want to take with you to represent the home, knowing you're always going to remember it?
I love
You
that
know, we,
idea. I
we can
love that
be
idea.
anywhere in the world and reminisce about memories from middle school, high school. We take these with us, and so this is just an object to remind us of that. And then the last step of the ritual is to give. How can you give some positive energy back to the home, almost as a way to thank the home, but also to give that positive energy to the next owner?
Mm.
May they have the same love for that home. May it provide them the same respite and relaxation and belonging. So, what can you give that's not like an update, but like, do you want to plant a new flower in the backyard? Do you want to write your name somewhere like really hidden? Just knowing that these bones have history. There's a
Mm.
lot of love that was poured into this house, and you're kind of moving that forward.
Yeah, that reminds me of when a seller receives an offer, right? And they get multiple offers, and maybe one offer has a letter from a buyer, and it's somebody that they can relate to. Oh, that
Mm,
was us when we bought this home,
exactly.
And even sometimes a seller will pick a buyer based on their profile, you know, based on the fact that it's a young family, maybe she's pregnant or they have a young kid or like whatever it is, and they'll take less money because they want to give the home, this thing that they love so
Mm,
much, to somebody that is going to take care of it in their eyes as much as they did, and like carry on the legacy of the home.
mm. I love that. I think it gives meaning to the home. This isn't just a business transaction. This is, willing the same type of comfort to the next person. We wrote a note when we bought our home, and I was like 12 weeks pregnant. I think that did help, because it's like they want the same joy and energy to be filled with the home. Not everyone. Someone's going to want the highest dollar, but
Yeah.
I think it can feel better even when you're decluttering and you're thinking like, this can go to someone who would really enjoy it. Letting it live on in a way provides a lot of meaning.
Yeah, I like that. It's just like an energy. It's a mindset. It's like a manifestation of what you want to bring. That house gave you so much love. Now give that house to somebody else with all that love, right? So
Yes. To honor, to keep, to give. And so, when we talk about some other ways to move through this process too, we then talk about grief and what grief looks like in the body and in the soul. And grief is like waves in the ocean. It comes in cycles. It can be very intense, it can be very pounding, and then it can let up. There are high tides where it's very strong, and then low tides where it's very calm. And grief is just a very strong array of emotion that can consume the body. As we talked about with that attachment, we don't like to be apart from people or things that we love. We ache for it because we would do anything to reunite. If we were flippant about loved ones and they were like about to get run over by a car, we wouldn't like risk our lives to save them. So our own survival is, I won't feel okay until my loved one is okay.
mm,
So when that is removed and it's not an option, we feel a very intense sense of loss. And if we don't, sometimes it's just displaced in other areas. So there's the wave of grief and sadness, which is what we think about, crying and really just mourning. But sometimes it shows up as irritability, frustration, anxiety, power struggles with a realtor, uncertainty. I don't know if I want to sell. Is this all a mistake? Um, it can be displaced in other directions. They may feel it physically, not sleeping well, changes in appetite, not being able to concentrate. But these are all cues to hone in on. It's okay to be sad about this. This is grief. And I think even naming it, this is a lost experience. And my brain is confused. Why am I, our brain likes to go on autopilot. So when you've been driving home to the same place for 8 years or 15 years or 20 years, it's disoriented while you'd be driving somewhere else and calling that home. Even though the other part of your brain was like, this is what makes sense, the nostalgic part of your brain is sad about it. And of course it is. It doesn't have to stay that way, but we honor it for now. We honor that this is grief.
yeah, I like how you said to name it, because a lot of these sellers are so unconscious of what's happening. They're not self-aware at the fact that they're feeling just yucky, and they have no idea why they're feeling yucky. They're just feeling yucky, and so
Mm,
they're so that and their subconscious is like driving them away from what
exactly.
their conscious wants. Their conscious wants, hey, we're gonna sell here because we're gonna move over here. It's a bigger house, or downgrading, like whatever it is. But subconsciously, they're acting in a way that is against selling the house.
They're
Because
sabotaging it.
they are, and they're just not self-aware. And so like you said, it's really good to be like, hey, yes, I'm selling a home I've been in for so many years, so many memories, so many things. I'm grieving. You need to
Yes,
grieve in order to like pass through that energy through your body, otherwise it's
exactly.
stuck.
Exactly. We grieve to move through it.
Mm.
When we don't move through it, we're paralyzed, and we're shaking because we're not, willing to experience it or see it. And you said it's so important to name it. There's actually a very famous saying. that was coined by Dr. Dan Siegel called Name It to Tame It. And he found that naming an emotion lessens its intensity. So simply by saying, I'm experiencing sadness, it softens it. It's almost like the brain didn't know what was going on. And once it found the right home, oh, that's what it is. It's an emotion. Then I can release it. Dr. Dan Siegel also found that when you name an emotion, it shifts the brain activation from the fight or flight, that crisis mode, to the prefrontal cortex to be able to understand what's happening, gain perspective. I'm not going to feel this way forever. Emotions are temporary. There's stuff on the other side. Let's plan how to get through this. You can talk and process through it. It's where we regulate emotion. So when you said to name it, that's exactly it. What am I experiencing? What name can I put to this experience so that it's seen and understood?
Yeah, you can almost like move it from like you said. I totally understand from moving it from here to here, but also like in like a different context. Like it's like this thing's right here, and just move it a little bit further away where you can actually see it, understand it. Okay, this is what I'm going through. Like what can I do to like you know like get this thing to like either like just to go through it or just to process it. So I love that. And so when you're dealing with sellers, right? And they're coming to your office or they're you're meeting them on Zoom, what besides telling them to go through that process of actually grieving to like naming that, what other things can you give them to help them with this process of selling their home?
Well, what I do in my office is I experience it with them.
Mm.
So I'm not feeling the emotion, but I'm sitting with them as they are working through it. So whenever they experience an emotion, I lean in. Tell me more. What else is there? Where are you feeling it in the body? So what a good friend can do or family member can do is to allow the emotion to exist and give it more space. And what sellers can do is to reach out for support. I need to talk. I'm feeling sad. We want that to be aired out, and having it witnessed by another person is particularly powerful. So in my office, we're feeling it, we're
Mm.
naming it, we're moving through it, and we're seeing what other outlets folks can access to also get those needs met. And a lot of it is like, choose a friend who's not fearful of emotion, because if someone's going to shut it down right away, you're not going to want to uncover more. But there are some special people in our lives that are really good with letting you feel. They're good with giving you space. They understand this is healing. It's bonding for them to be a part of it. It doesn't scare them off. And that's who we want to go to. We also need to understand the benefit, like you said, the benefit of emotion, the name it to tame it, but also the benefit of crying. And not everyone's a crier, so this isn't to force crying on anyone. Some people just simply aren't, and that's fine. Like, you do you. But there are a lot of people that fight it. And I see them. They're like this in their chair. They're like, they want the tears to go back into their head. And we talk about the benefits of crying. It's actually really phenomenal what's happening biologically when we cry. Our tears are probably some of the fastest, most effective forms of pain relief we have. They release oxytocin and endorphins that are our natural feel-good drugs. These are good drugs.
Free.
Free. And our body is designed to use it. Free with few negative consequences. So it eases emotional pain. It eases physical pain. It also, tears activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our part of the nervous system that is used to rest and digest and calm. We have the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight. Like, get your heart rate up, start sweating, be really anxious, stop your digestion, stop eating. Our parasympathetic is like, okay, everyone breathe. You're safe now. the tears activate the parasympathetic nervous system.
Mm.
That is beautiful. We have been trained and we rewired to ignore a really good, effective system. So to allow yourself to soften, allow yourself to cry, it also signals to other people. Crying means the same thing everywhere in the world. It's universal. Our emotions are universal. When we smile, we can be on any city on the planet. We know that person's happy. When they're crying, we know they're sad. It's kind of cool how like it's like this
That's
internal
true.
language we
Universal
have.
language. Hmm.
So when we cry, it signals to other people, I need help. I need help. And a lot of people will soften to it. Some are more helpful than others, but a lot of people, it's a cue for them. I need to drop off a meal. I need to invite them to a movie. I need access, So allow people to see it. This is a time to gain support and open up and feel the love of people that are walking through this with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's just like you said, it's finding the right friend that is very empathetic and just there to listen, hold that space for you. So if you can't find that friend, obviously, reach out to Johanna because she's a pro at this. This is why we
Yeah,
had you on
yeah,
here. Yeah, no, and these are all great tips. So thank you. I know our next topic is actually one of my favorite ones. Well,
yeah.
I don't know about favorite ones, but it's the one that I was most excited to talk about with you. All right, so let's talk about a section that I have to deal with a lot, which is unrealistic pricing. So it's the price of pride, right? So meeting with sellers, coming prepared to a listing appointment, when they call us and they say, hey, come over, we're ready to sell. Let's talk about logistics. Let's talk about pricing. So I come over and then I come with a bunch of comps, right? Data points, homes that are very similar in size, lot size,
Mm.
view, flat pad, no flat pad, on a busy street, on a cul-de-sac street. So there's a lot of different factors that we have to go through to analyze a home. And then when we come prepared and you show them all these comps and then you ask the seller, so what do you think your house is worth? And they give you just a number that makes like they're just you don't know where it's coming from, and you ask them, and look, I've done it so many times, so I know what to expect. And so when I get this kind of reaction or when I get this type of unrealistic price, I always ask them, where did you come up with that price?
Mm.
Where's that coming from? And then so they may say, well, this house isn't as nice as mine, or this house this, right? So they always think that their house is special.
Mm.
And every once in a while it is. But if it was, then I would tell them, hey, like you have a special home. Like I think we can get this price for it because it's very unique. But for the most part, if you have the right, data points and comparables, you're able to get to a price range that makes sense, right? So let's talk about this because this is something that I want to learn more about. And why do sellers have such unrealistic pricing expectations?
So I think there's a few things going on. One is just wishful thinking. I mean, we have wishful thinking about all sorts of things. The type of person we're going to end up with, how far our kids are going to go in volleyball. Like we just have these hopes that are often very unrealistic. And we're trying to put a number on something that is hard to quantify. Like, I feel so good in this home. I love this home. I've loved being able to walk to this park. I've loved how my artwork looked on that wall. But it's so particular to you. You love the home. That doesn't mean that the person next to you is going to feel that love and think it's worth a certain dollar sign. So they're putting a number on the amount of joy and energy and effort they put in their home. And something else that's kind of fun, we like to think that our thoughts are objective and that our opinions are facts, and they're really not. We tend to inflate our own sense of importance. We tend to inflate our abilities. We have a lot of thought processes that benefit ourselves and our self esteem so that we feel good. And these are called cognitive biases. there are ways for our brain to make shortcuts and assumptions based on previous experiences and ways to feel better about ourselves. So there's a fun one, it's called illusory superiority, which is where we overinflate our abilities. There's been a lot of studies, for example, on people rating how good of a driver they are. And study after study tends to hover around like 80% of people think that they are a better than average driver, which is statistically impossible.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm one of them. I think I'm a good driver. I think I'm better. I think I'm a better than average driver. I will say at least I'm a better than average parallel parker. Like I am good at parallel parking. But who wants to go around thinking they're like average at everything? There's different
Nobody.
studies that, yeah, there's different studies that show like somewhere around 65% of Americans think they're smarter than the average person, which again is statistically impossible. But we're not walking around saying, I have an average child, they're average at sports and art. I have, an average, car or whatever, or I have average opinions on people. And so we probably don't want to think that we have an average home. I have an average home. It's okay. It doesn't, if we've poured our lives into it and we've decorated it the way that we love and it's so meaningful to us, we give it a little bump. Like this one is special. And a lot of that is to protect our own ego. A lot of it is because we don't know what we don't know. That's where you come in. You've seen thousands of homes. You know what will sell at what price. They don't know. That's why they have you. That's why they're not listing it themselves. So you have to listen to your realtor and respect their expertise. And a lot of it also is the feedback we've been given over our lives. Like, what do you say when you enter into someone's home?
Always. That's a good point. Your house is
Gorgeous,
amazing. Wow.
gorgeous. Oh, you're so close to it. I love the location. Oh, this is so charming. Da, da. It's the same. Like, who's meeting someone's kid and go, you have a perfectly average kid, or your
Never
boyfriend
said.
is so average. It's great. Everything's inflated. They're so nice and brilliant and da da da. So it boosts our ego. It feels good. So we want to be the outlier. This is a special home. You have to see the bones and da da da. And luckily, we have you to pull us out of it because you know that likely it will sit at that price.
And a lot of the times, Joanna, it's literally just like, you don't want to get in an argument with the seller. And a lot of times it gets to that point where they're just not listening to you. So I said, look, why don't we do this? Why don't we test out your price? Let's give it a shot. Like I want to make sure you feel good about selling this house, right?
Ah,
And then we test it out, and 99% of the time it sits there, and we give it 30 days, and then at least they're happy with it. They got their time to see if the market responds to their price, and usually it doesn't, and then we have to reduce it. And a lot of times they'll end up losing more money doing that, unfortunately. So there's a cost in doing that,
there's a cost
right?
to it.
Yeah.
I also wonder too if selling the home and thinking you made this, big profit eases the blow a little bit. There's
Yes.
something like, yeah, it's sad to say goodbye, but I got an extra 50, that it makes it a little more enticing, you know, but instead you're describing this power struggle and there's a price to it, the price of pride.
I think here in America, the home represents something more than it does in most countries. Not in the fact that obviously the home makes us feel comfortable. That's universal, but
Right?
it's more over here. It's the American dream, right? Having a home, and in a lot of other countries, like for instance Japan, when I was over there, I was shocked to hear that homes do not appreciate over there. You could buy a home for, I don't know, whatever, $100,000, right? And in 10 years, it's worth the same, maybe a little bit more.
Okay.
So over here, we're pretty lucky that our home is an asset that appreciates. But in a lot of countries, that is not the case.
So we hope that it appreciates. We want to see a
Yeah.
positive bump at the end of it.
Yeah.
And we want to hope that our style translates to money.
Yeah.
That our style is exactly what the buyer wants and that they're going to pay more for it.
Yeah, it's really the biggest struggle for us as agents, especially a more seasoned agent where, we have more listings than we have buyers. So we're having to deal with this issue a lot more, and this is where we have to become therapists in a way. I used to get very emotionally attached to my idea of what I wanted an outcome from a meeting with the seller, right?
Okay.
And I would get charged up when they don't listen to me or trust me. And so I said, you know what? It's okay. Like, I now understand where they're coming from. So I'm a lot more empathetic, and I'm not attached to what the outcome's going to be. Like, I think now I go into the meetings being like, okay, this is probably what's going to happen, and
Okay.
this is how I deal with it. And a lot of times it's like, look, I understand where you're coming from, and I want to make sure that you feel good about the sell. At the end of the day, it's about the relationship. Like I'm going to sell this house, you're going to move out, but I want to stay, I want to stay close to you because this is how I build my business. And I also just enjoy doing that. And I want to make sure that they feel comfortable. And a lot of times, if I'm dealing with a new client, and I would say, 50% of my business is still with new clients that are calling me. And so the trust hasn't been built, right? Even though I've sold X amount of houses in their neighborhood, they still don't know me, right? But for the past clients, it's much easier because they know that I have their best interest at heart, and they know that if they listen to me, they're going to get top dollar, right? But it's building the trust with the seller, making them feel heard. It's almost being like a therapist at that first initial meeting.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's a longer, it's an hour, 2-3 hour long meeting, or we meet multiple times to get to where we need to get to because they need to process it. Right? And a lot of it is also furniture in their house. When it's a beautiful house, all we got to do is stage it because the furniture is not going to attract the right buyer. It's too specific to what they like, and it's not neutral, and it's not going to like when we photograph the house, that furniture is not going to make that space look good, right? Or like decluttering all the frames of all. I mean, like some people have 20-30 frames on a table. It's like stacked like this, and so that's also, again, like we were saying earlier, that's a hard process to have them declutter before they put their house on the market,
because it still feels like their home. You're telling them to change their home, and even if you put a price on something that you both agree to, but the buyer offers less than that, and you're like, I think we should take it, they feel like they're getting cheated out of their own home.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there can be some like unconscious, frustration or resentment toward the buyer. Like, you're intruding in on my home.
100%.
What do you mean you don't like my furniture? What do you mean you want me to repair the window that has worked for me for 20 years? Like, who do you think you are? It's still this huge sense of ownership. So we want a top dollar. We want the other person to just love everything the way it is because it's such a personal reflection of us.
I think a good idea, and I always tell sellers this too, if they have the opportunity to to go and buy the other house, move out of the house, and then sell it vacant, it's always so much smoother. They'll get more money. It's easier to show. It's easier to have open houses because when you have a seller that is going to be living at the house during that sell process, it's much harder, right? Because when you show it to a buyer, and over here in LA, we, like the listing agent, the seller's agent, always going to accompany the buyer's agent and the buyer when we show the property. And so we always say, hey seller, we have a showing tomorrow at 12. Is that okay with you? Sure. We'll get the house clean. We got a housekeeper here, blah, blah, blah. Or, we'll make sure it looks good. So they have to have that house in show ready condition all the time. That's not easy to live in like that. Like who lives in a house that's show ready? Some people do, but they have, a live-in maid, or they have somebody come every single day to make sure the house is looking good. But it's not always the case. But so that's one of my tips is if you have the opportunity and you have the resources, move out of the house, go buy that next house and then sell it after you move out.
And I wonder if that would make things a little more seamless emotionally. Yes, you're saying goodbye, but you're already building a new home. You already have a place to rest your head. Like, you're going to be okay.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. If you have the resources.
If you have the resources.
Yeah. Johanna, another thing that I've noticed as well is that when I'm dealing with a seller and it's two parties, right, husband and wife, or just two partners, I would say about 75% of the time, the partners are not aligned in the expectations for pricing, the move out day, or selling the house. So what kind of tips can we give these types of sellers when it's two people or three or it's a family, right? And they're not aligned.
To talk about what emotionally is happening underneath the discrepancy. So, is the one who wants a higher price more resistant to moving? Do they not feel ready? Are they feeling more insecure about money? We need more. We're not, like, what is driving the desire for the price? The one who has a lower price, are they feeling more overwhelmed with the maintenance of the home? They're really ready for the next stage. They want something fresh. They've been, in cold Chicago forever. They really want to start fishing in Florida. Like, what is it underneath it?
Mm.
Because it's enough when we get too hooked on the number, like, it's enough to compromise. Like, okay, let's meet in the middle, or let's give it 1 month. And then, there's a rational way to compromise. But I wonder what's underneath that's keeping the tug of war so strong. And to talk about that, that's what we want to listen to. That's what we want to soothe. That's what we want to work through, to hopefully find something that's nestled somewhere in the middle. If something is harder for one partner, we want to hear it.
Yeah.
And if something, if the price is too frustrating, I feel stuck, we want to hear that.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's like I go to that initial listing appointment and then I say, why don't you guys talk about it, digest what I'm giving you. You don't have to
Great.
give me an answer now. Talk about it, and then let's meet next week. Give them a few days to really, go into the numbers together and feel good and be aligned. It's super important for them to be aligned, because if they're not aligned, it's going to be such a power struggle throughout this process.
And I'm glad you give them some time to think about it, because what could be an initial absolutely not, like, hell no, are we listing that low, is the fight or flight activating. That's like putting a stomp on it. And then when they resonate, it's not always how they're going to feel in 5 days. Let them think about it. Let them talk about it. How badly do we want to move? Are we really not ready to move yet? Like, what does this information tell us? Give them time for it to settle. There may be times that couples reach out to you and you're surprised that they landed, they kind of met you a little bit closer than you were anticipating, because they just needed time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're also helping them work through. You have to feel good about this number. You have to decide how badly you want to move. If this is the number you're going to get, what are you really wanting in that next chapter? Is that enough to justify the number? And you have to feel ready for that.
Yeah.
But when there are discrepancies like that, I think you are the one that provides your rationale of where you think the number would be, and you leave it to the couple to work through it. Most of them will, even if they argue about it and they get really frustrated at each other, they're going to come to some agreement. Like, something's going to move forward with you, or they're not going to move.
Yeah.
Or
And
they'll
I
find
think
another
it's
agent who gives them a fake price, and it sits there forever. And and then they eventually come back. They find their way. Their process just looks differently.
that happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if I give them a realistic price, which I always do, because I'm not here to waste my time. I'm not here just to list the property. I'm here to sell a property. There's a lot of agents out there that will just list it for whatever price, just to get a listing, and you see it sit on the market, and you're like, oh man, it's just really hard to see that, because they
Right.
end up making less money on that than if they would have priced it right initially and sold it right away. Because buyers always see that as why has that house been on the market for so long? There's
Right.
got to be something wrong with it. Even though there's
Right.
nothing wrong with it, it's just overpriced. Johanna, thank you so much for helping sellers out there navigate the process of selling a home. It's very stressful. I deal with it all the time. And it's great to know that there's somebody that can be by their side, throughout this process. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And on our next episode, our last episode, maybe we'll have more, but for now, our 3-part series on the third part, our third video, will be about trust cells and how that can be very, very complicated when you're dealing with a lot of different siblings or different relatives to sell a house, and how to navigate through that process.
Looking forward to it.
All right, we'll see you later. Thank you.